Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and a warm welcome to our session here at the Digital Transformation Cafe. I'm Isabel Parker, I'm your host and your facilitator for this session, and I'm joined by some seriously distinguished panelists for a lively 1 hour on how the essential 8 technologies are redefining capabilities in the legal industry. So before I turn to the panel, I just want to run through a little bit of housekeeping, if I may. So the way we're going to run this session is that I will give a brief introduction to set the context for what we're talking about. I'm then going to hand over to each of our panelists in turn, who'll give a kind of 10-minute or so take on the subject from their perspective. Then I will facilitate a bit of back and forth Q&A between the panelists, and I'll be feeding in your questions as we go. They're going to appear in my private chat, and I can pull those in to the conversation. You can vote for the question you would most like have the panel answer. So please, let's make it really, really interactive because we really want to hear from you. And then at the end, I'll summarize and wrap up. So to the panel, firstly, who am I? I'm Isabel Parker. I'm a lawyer. I'm a mother of 3. I'm based in London. I spent most of my career at Freshfields Brookhouse Deringer as a finance lawyer and then latterly as their Chief Legal Innovation Officer. And now I'm on the customer side. I'm the Executive Director of the Digital Legal Exchange, and you can find out more about them in our virtual booth. And I am joined by a fantastic panel here today. So I'm going to start by introducing Duke Trang, who is himself a faculty advisor to the Digital Legal Exchange, but he has many other roles as well over his 25 years of experience in legal services. So Duke has been a lawyer in private practice, in global law firms. He's been in-house as general counsel. He's held business leadership roles, and now he works at major Lindsay in Africa, advising in-house departments and law firms on strategy, organizational design, and strategic talent development. So welcome to you, Duke. We're also honored to have on the panel Elsie Ng. Elsie's head of talent solutions for Singapore at LinkedIn, and she's responsible for that business for corporations and for the public sector as well, and her team advises on a range of different areas. I'll read them out to you here because it's quite a lineup: social recruitment, employer branding, e-learning, employee experience, and most important for this session, I think, data-driven decision-making, leveraging talent insights. So there's no better person to speak to talent issues than Elsie. Welcome. Finally, we are honored to have as part of the panel Rajesh Srinivasan. And Rajesh will be known to many of you, I think. He's a technology lawyer and head of the TMT practice at Raja & Tan. He's also himself a tech entrepreneur, director and co-founder of Raja & Tan Technologies and Raja & Tan Cybersecurity, and to add to this list, a global tech and telecoms policy consultant with agencies such as the World Bank and the UNDP. In his free time, whenever you have free time, Rajesh, I can't imagine that you do have much of it, he builds PCs and creates NFTs. So welcome to our panel. Great. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, for the geeks that have tuned in for a discussion about drones and blockchain, I'm sorry, this is not the right panel for you. This is not primarily a panel about technology. There is no doubt that technology developments like the Essential 8 that are in the session abstract are impacting the way that all leading corporations deliver their services. That's not in doubt. But what we want to focus on today is how technology is affecting the way that lawyers, which we mean both in-house and private practice lawyers, how they work, and the new skills they're going to have to develop to remain trusted business advisors to their clients. And lawyers' clients, I don't need to tell you this, my panel or the audience, are changing really, really rapidly. And the pandemic has definitively accelerated digital transformation across all sectors. I was looking before this session at a survey that Microsoft and The Economist undertook in 2021, which was cross-industry, 800 participants, and 72% of that cross-industry sector said that they have seen an increase in investment in digital as a result of the pandemic. So there's a direct correlation here. And the words of the Wall Street Journal are kind of ringing in my ears from 2018. I'll quote you. Today, no company can make, deliver, or market its product efficiently without technology. So we all agree, I hope, that our clients are changing, but how is the legal services landscape responding, and are we responding quickly enough? So our panel's going to look at this through 2 lenses. The first is the practice of law, and the second is the business of law. In terms of the practice of law, there's no doubt that lawyers, both in-house and in private practice, are having to develop new advisory capabilities, advising on the regulatory implications and the legal implications of digital transformation. That might involve upskilling in M&A, in antitrust, data ethics advice, all of that. And the business of law is also changing, though arguably we would say at a slower rate than the practice of law. Despite a lot of chat about ALSPs, Big Four, new providers, there's still a space for the Amazon of law, someone to come in and seize that client experience space. And a growing number of firms, we'll hear from Rajesh on this, are investing in product development or using AI in transactional practice. The essential 8 technologies really haven't been in the delivery of law yet. In fact, in the Gartner hype cycle for legal tech for 2021, only 2 of our essential 8 make it onto the curve. So, with this backdrop, we're going to look at data. You know, what's the market really asking of for in terms of skills and capabilities? Where are you going to find those people? We're going to explore what clients really want from their lawyers and how lawyers can capitalize on the technology opportunities for new offerings. And we're going to start by looking at how technology is impacting day-to-day practice in a law firm setting. So I'm going to turn to Rajesh first. Now, Rajesh, you lead the TMT practice, as we said, and you're also closely involved in product development. So we know that Rajan Tan has an awesome reputation, both in the advisory space and for innovative delivery. So how has the firm gone about creating this? Is it a strategy, a conscious strategy? Is it luck? Is it leadership? Tell us a little bit about your story from the Rajan Tan perspective.
Sure, Isabel, and thanks all. I'm glad to be here today. Well, you mentioned that strategy, talent, and client needs. It's actually a combination of all 3. We start first with a clear strategy as to how to execute this. What are the client needs? What and where do we need to deploy technology? But not technology for technology's sake, but technology that will help us to do 2 key things. One, allow us to develop multidisciplinary, multi-skill advisory capabilities. As the second minister had mentioned today at the launch, that is a necessity today. We need to be able to provide solutions that address clients' real needs in a technology-driven world. And second, to leverage technology to deliver legal services more effectively. Those are really the 2 core areas that we look at. So efficiency gains, skill gain are really the key factors. So with that in mind, what we tried to do was to look first at our lawyers and see how we can get our lawyers to understand the needs of a multidisciplinary and a multi-skill advisory capability. That means teaching lawyers skills such as design thinking, teaching them the ability to look at not just their areas of specialization, but to leverage off the strength of all of the other lawyer skills, bring them together and redefine legal practice itself. So our example in what is being executed as we speak actually is a pivoting of all of our practices from our traditional strongholds to still have deep skill sets in those specific areas. So a finance and regulatory lawyer remains a finance and regulatory lawyer, but he or she will work closely with a technology lawyer in delivering a fintech solution. So then the subject matter where the services are being delivered, whether it is a traditional bank or a digital bank, you have the right lawyers with the right skill sets in the field addressing clients' needs. So that need for us to look at the structural change in the manner in which legal services are provided and the teams that are engaged is fundamental, right? So that technology knowledge plus the deep domain knowledge in each of the areas. So that means that we've created specific practices under the moniker of data and digital economy that focuses on areas such as digital asset management, not IP and IP protection, which is still necessary, but where and how is intellectual property used in the market today? Largely what we call intangible asset management, and a large part of the intangible asset are digital assets. So understanding things like non-fungible tokens, how they work, how to protect the value of that, not just in the context of IP, because this is a new subset of digital assets that transcend and coexist with intellectual property. What tools do you need to protect that? Guess what? It's not just the law. Why? Because NFTs are not really driven by intellectual property law. They're driven by asset and tokenization legal principles. So that realization that what we are comfortable with as lawyers before, saying that, oh, asset management equals IP, now has fundamentally shifted to a multidisciplinary skills, because to do NFTs, I can't just put my legal skills forward. I need the technical capabilities to demonstrate how NFTs are protected, how they're created, and all the rest of the ecosystem requirements requires me to work with my Raja and Tan technology people as well. And that is a clear today example of how we pivot the capabilities of lawyers to be able to suit what the market demands today. Right? This is not a future set we're talking about. This is today's expectation in terms of the marketplace. And that need will grow and expand over time to cover all lawyers across all firm sizes as well. So that's the need for us to look at developing multidisciplinary, multi-skills capability. The other aspect is leveraging technology to deliver services to clients more effectively. And that's where, as you mentioned, Isabel, things like artificial intelligence, usage of blockchain technology from a service delivery standpoint needs to be considered. AI in legal tech is not a new concept. I tend to say it's a 2017 thing. We're in 2021, so let's get real. What I mean by that is, we've tried it, we've tested it, it works in specific areas, but it's not a panacea to all forms of due diligence. And I think what we have today is the realization that AI has its space, and AI very clearly is not here to replace, but to augment legal services. It has its specific role in terms of speeding up mundane activities, but that's it. The lawyers need to still come in and provide legal analytical capabilities on the findings extracted through the AI systems remains and is still fundamental to the completion of a proper due diligence exercise. So how do we change the DUD construct? Well, let me share with you another case study. What we've done on that front is when we as lawyers go to do a due diligence exercise for M&A, the question to ask yourself is that the only thing that we have in our kit as lawyers, right? Well, we are good at doing due diligence. We can assess documents. We can look at a project, a target company and say, okay, this company is well worth buying. We've done all the due diligence. We know the company owns all its assets, good to go. Or can we throw something else into the mix? And so when we go to market, we take Raja and Tan, the lawyers in our corporate M&A team, and our Raja and Tan cybersecurity team, and the service offering that's made available to the clients is an assessment of the target company's readiness from a legal standpoint and from a cybersecurity standpoint. This is one example. There are many other metrics that come into play as well when it comes to a company acquisition. The question to ask, therefore, is this: where do we see legal practitioners plying our trade moving forward? Is it just in that narrow sector of legal capability and expertise? And will that be enough? Or is the client's demand real, which it is, or can we satisfy the client's need in terms of coming across with a more multidisciplinary set of skills and capabilities? And that is really where we play in. And I think that's where every law firm should be looking at, finding their own comfort levels of deploying their own lawyers in a manner such that you can leverage off every skill set. Another example, e-commerce, right? Electronic commerce is often seen to be the domain of TMT lawyers. I can't stand that construct. It is completely fatally flawed. It is not a TMT construct. E-commerce is about trade. E-commerce is about sanctions. E-commerce is about tax. E-commerce is about goods and services type approval. And e-commerce is about the technology, Electronic Transactions Act, and cybersecurity and the rest of it. There are so many facets to that simple word. And as lawyers, we constrain ourselves to just one construct. That's wrong, and we need to expand that view. Finally, if I may, it also means that the pedagogy of lawyers needs to change. And we need to leverage off organizations like SAL with SAL Lifted to do multidisciplinary training. We need to look at using that skill set to come back and create solutions and tools that cut across multiple skill sets. And the good news for all of us is that the ministry itself is fully aware of this, which is why you see initiatives like what was mentioned by the minister this morning, the legal technology platform, the LTPI initiative, where there are steps being taken by the ministry to understand lawyers' needs to use technology, but at the same time developing a platform that's agnostic and not technology specific, and thereby reducing the pain point, the most important pain point for lawyers in terms of adopting technology. So those are just some quick thoughts, and happy to expand on them later.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much, Rajesh. Just before I go to Duke, because I'm fascinated by what you've had to say about building these multidisciplinary teams and multi-skilled. Very quickly, where are you finding these lawyers? Where are you finding the people, the tech capabilities, the legal capabilities? Where are they? Because there's not many of them, I bet.
They're not. And the thing to bear in mind is that you don't necessarily need to make a lawyer a tech person. You get a good lawyer, you get a good tech person, you bring them together, and that's when the magic happens. So we set up Raja and Tan Academy, for example, and we train both our lawyers and we bring our technology people and help them to train the lawyers on tech issues. But when we go to the market, if it's a cybersecurity matter, I'll be doing the legal due diligence, but my cybersecurity experts in Raja and Tan Cybersecurity are the ones doing the breach incident report, the root cause analysis, and all of the other technical requirements. So don't pretend to be a master of all trades. The challenge and the magic is bring the two skill sets together, and then you'll be able to deliver.
Fascinating. We're definitely going to come back to this topic because it's a really interesting concept. I'm going to move to Duke now. Now, we've heard from Rajesh Duke about the structural changes that are required within law firms to create these multidisciplinary, multi-skilled teams. And I want, with your expertise now, to look at it from the customer side, from the client side, if you like. What's happening with GCs and in-house counsel? I hear some noise about, product developments starting there and, commercializing products, but are they really invested in this new upskilling, or are they depending on outside counsel like Raja and Tan to do all this for them?
No, thank you, Isabel and Rajesh for setting up the discussion. It's and by the way, I'm not a technologist. And in many ways, I want to maybe go back to basics, if you will. Part of it is, as you mentioned, being client-centric. What exactly are clients looking for? And then we can then look at what lawyers we should develop or how we should teach lawyers. Lawyers, on the business side, clients have a problem. There may be a legal component of problem, but there may be other components around financial, delivery, regulatory, whatever the case may be. They have a problem to solve. And in the market, whether you're a general counsel or a private practice lawyer, they're asking, you're very expensive. If you're at the table, what value are you bringing? You're expected to be a very good lawyer, by the way, but can you connect the dots? Can you see how the law is connected to all aspects of that particular business problem or even personal problem that I have? And so if you look at that perspective, then it reinforces what Rajesh was saying, is that number one, being a very good lawyer is, table stakes, as we've heard in different capacity. And I want to spend a little bit just emphasize that point. There are many young lawyers today who say, gosh, yeah, I'll learn the law, but I need to go learn technology, I have this and that. I would urge you to spend to be very focused on trying to understand what it means to be a very good lawyer, number one. Because I see many young lawyers making that mistake, saying, well, if I throw in technology and business skills, and I don't have to spend so much time on the legal skills. That is simply not true. Our experience is that unless you're a very good lawyer, you're not going to understand how the other aspects of the problem, whether it's technology or business, impact the problem. So I didn't want to kind of skim and say, oh yes, legal skills are table stakes, but it truly is table stakes. So what that means is that the key skill that clients are looking for is, do you know how to apply the law in the context of my business problem? And that may include a technology component. And so that is where what general counsel and consumers of legal services are looking for. Then that begs the question, how are we training lawyers to understand and apply the law within context? And unfortunately, we're not that good at it, because we've been very good. If you look at the law schools or even the general counsel or partners, we came out of a system where we're taught to look at the law to identify risks first, rather than understanding the big picture, whether it includes business or technology issues. And so what I'm seeing in the market is that firms and universities and even in-house counsels are struggling to develop those context based problem solving skills. So for example, I was at a top, I would say one of the top 10 law firms in the world, over $2 billion in revenue. They showed me their competency matrix. Many organizations have a career matrix, what it means to be a junior associate, mid-level associate, senior associate, or junior counsel, senior counsel in-house, and the competencies expected. And I said to them, I said, oh, this is interesting. How are you implementing this career matrix? And they said, well, we leave it to the partner and the associate to take this and we have a menu of training offerings and we leave it to them to figure it out. And I said, well, you've been doing this for the last 20 years. How has that worked out for you? And the same thing in-house. Well, not so great. Only a small percentage actually develop those interdisciplinary skills that Rajesh mentioned. I said, well, if it hasn't worked, why are you continuing doing this? I mean, what we're finding in the market, both in-house as well as law firm, is that even if they have that kind of career matrix that sets out the competency, and which the project that Lyft is working on as well, what we find is that there's really very little mapping to the training and development framework to implement those competency-based career models. So oftentimes it's the HR or learning development function of the in-house or the law firm would say, here's a competency matrix, and they hand it over to the lawyers and say, good luck. And it simply does not work very well. And so one, just kind of zooming out a little bit from a individual point of view, I would urge the lawyers on the call to say, look, I need to be a good lawyer, but number two, how do I pick up these interdisciplinary skills to help the clients connect the dots of these complex business problems, which we know are getting more complex over time. From a scaling point of view, part of my work, and I would then urge many of whether they're managing partners or general counsel, to relook and rethink the entire talent development model, all the way from the competency-based career matrix to actual training development plans that are mapped to that career matrix, which is not happening out in our profession today. And unless we have the structural rethinking of talent development, both in-house as well as in law firms, we're not going to move the needle in terms of creating the kinds of lawyers that Rajesh mentioned, who are good at law, but at the same time can have the skills to identify non-legal area, parts of the client problem, so that they can either exercise that skill or actually pull in the experts, the cybersecurity expert or e-commerce expert, the technologist, to help solve that problem. Unless they then connect the dots, they don't have the skills to say, hey, that's where the problem is. I need to pull in these types of SMEs. I need to go talk to the finance person. I need to go talk to the delivery person to solve the client's problem. So I think, like I said, I'm old school. What I think we need to go back to basic HR talent development and say, how are we looking at the pedagogy of talent development, rather than being in the say, oh, technology is important or financial acumen is important. Let's give lawyers 10 courses of technology courses from which they could choose. Many firms do that, and many in-house counsels do that, departments do that, but there's no structure for the lawyer to say, well, which ones do I choose? Mm-hmm. There's no curating of that menu, if you will, and explaining why the way we've curated the pedagogy, why this is important. And so by not connecting the dots, what happens in practice is this: the lawyers that we know are very busy, they're under stress, they're under pressure. The young lawyers I know, when I went to practice, we lived in fear. We were in a room, we were afraid that the clients would call us out. Well, Duke, you don't know what you're talking about. We're expecting them to work under pressure, long days, and then we expect them to come back at home at night and reflect on the learning process and somehow make sense of it. It simply does not work for most lawyers or any smart group of smart people that I know. So I think there's a lot of work from the HR talent development side to curate that learning path or learning journey, to really help our colleagues at scale to develop the right skills.
That is fabulous. Thank you, Duke. Just very quickly, if I were to try to, I'm thinking all the time, how would I summarize what Duke's really trying to get at here? And what I'm hearing you say, I think, is that from a client perspective, if we're being really client-centric here, what clients actually want is someone that understands their business problem. So really, technology is just part of broader business skills that lawyers have to develop. It's a subset of those broader business skills, and rather than an end in itself. Is that a fair summary of your position?
It is, and I want to be very clear, because I can hear a lawyer sitting here listening to they're saying, "What are you talking about? You're telling me I need to be a great lawyer and I have to go learn technology skills? Well, what does that mean? Do I need to learn how to code or understand cybersecurity, whatever?" No, what it means is this: in your particular firm or in-house, there's a target client segment that has certain needs. If you truly understand their business needs, then you can start calibrating to the depth to which you need, for example, technology skills. You just need to understand how it works so that when it appears in your client's problem, then you can say, okay, it's time for me to reach out to the SME. Mm-hmm. There may be a practice area that you've chosen with a target clients where you say, you know what, in the area that I want to practice, and for these clients, I need deeper technology skills. So I want to go get certifications in A, B, or C. And so there's no single path for a lawyer. It really depends on again, your chosen practice area and the needs of the target client set in that practice area.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much, Duke. That was fascinating. We'll certainly be coming back to elements of that. I can see we've already got some questions on that theme. But Elsie, I want to bring you in at this point. Now, as head of talent for LinkedIn in Singapore, you have got, I think, a really unique perspective. Firstly, because you are part of a data-driven organization. That's what you do. And secondly, you have a very unique view of the market, of the insight from data about talent in the market. So what are you seeing? What can LinkedIn tell us about what the market is really demanding? What's happening on the ground?
Thanks so much, Isabel, and good afternoon, everyone. Some of you may be wondering, what am I doing coming from a social media company at a legal event? Look like this. Now, to start, let me share a bit on LinkedIn. Our vision is to create, next slide, please. Yeah. Our vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And the way we operationalize this is to create a digital representation of the global workforce. And on this digital map, we want to have all working professionals represented. And at this moment in Singapore, we have 2.7 million members in Singapore. Now, as well as the companies they are working for, the jobs provided by these companies, the skills that are required to get these jobs, the institutions members can go on to acquire the skills to land on these jobs with the companies. So with this digital map, which we call economic graph, we are able to get deeper insights into the global workforce. So what does LinkedIn economic graph tell us about the legal workforce? So this is why I'm here, to share with everybody some skills insights of the legal workforce. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So in line with today's topic on digital transformation, I have selected 2 data skills that are commonly needed by organizations going through digital transformation and make a comparison across industries. Now, on this slide, you can see that there is a 14% growth in data analysis skills in the legal industry in the last 12 months. Comparing it with other industries, the growth rate is ranked 66 over 100. Now, on Excel skills, there is a 9% growth in the legal industry in the last 12 months, and this is ranked 76 out of 100. Now, this is just an example that I've put out in short. Now, what this tells us here is that using example of data skills, the growth of such skills in the legal industry is lagging behind other industries. I'm sure there's a lot of reason, and probably you have your context. And I think that's somehow shed a little on this as well. Now, I also look at other tech skills, and it seems like the growth of tech skills in the legal industry may not have been prioritized. Right. Next, please. So, what are the fastest growing skills among legal professionals in Singapore and globally? So that's the question that we have. Now, on this slide, you can see a few interesting observations, which I would like to highlight. Analytical skills is a common, fastest growing skills globally, really across all continents. But if you look at North America, the top 6 fastest growing skills are actually outside of legal domain. And back to the earlier panelists who talk about, yes, the core legal knowledge is important, but there's also other augmented skills, right? And similarly, if you look at Europe, out of 6 out of 10 fastest growing skills are non-legal skills too. The one thing which is most glaring to me is that data-related skills like data analysis, databases are among the fastest growing in North America and Europe, but we're not seeing that in Singapore or in Asia Pacific. Now, is this is a question, is this a reflection of an up and coming trend, which lawyers here in Singapore need to be aware of? The next slide, please. Now, let's bring it closer to home. This slide shows a comparison between fastest growing skills among legal professionals within legal industries and non-legal industries. Now, I would like to first call out that there are many common skills among both groups, like litigation, legal research, legal advice, corporate law, a lot more. But there is a clear difference in skills growth among both groups. Now, on my earlier slide, you see that intellectual property law is one of the fastest growing skills in Singapore. And I think this is really aligned to what Regis has mentioned, right, as a group skills. But from this chart, what we can see is that this growth is largely driven by professionals within legal industries. Now, on the other hand, the growth of non-core skills like analytical skills is driven largely by professionals in non-legal industries. Now, interestingly, data analysis, which was among the fastest growing in North America and Europe, which was shown earlier, and not in Singapore, what we are seeing here is strong growth among legal professionals outside of legal industry. Now, this reason could be that they are working within industry who are a lot more transformed digitally and hence the faster adoption of data skills. So from this slide, we may conclude that legal professionals from non-legal industry have faster adoption of data skills, just data skills alone, as compared to professionals within legal industries. Next slide, please. So now that we have seen how skills are growing among legal professionals, I think it's also important to look at what are legal professionals learning? What is interesting to them, right? So one of our solution, LinkedIn Learning, is an online learning platform which is available on demand via desktop and mobile. And from our dashboard, we are seeing adoption of a more future-ready mindset in legal professionals. So in year 2020, which was last year, we can see that there's 146% increase in time spent learning by professionals in the legal industry. 41% more of their learning is focused on soft skills as compared to average learner. And courses on time management relating to working from home were highly popular. Legal professionals in Singapore are not just keen learners, they also adopt technology to support their learning, because we see that 36% more learning were done on mobile as compared to average learner. SAL has partnered with LinkedIn on digital upskilling for legal industry to stay resilient, competitive, and relevant. So after a successful pilot at the beginning of this pandemic, SAL Lifted LinkedIn was launched just last month to SAL members, and this is now being rolled out in phases. Now, within the first month of launch, Lifted LinkedIn had a very strong uptake, where we saw almost 2,000 SAL members activating their learning pathway. Well, what I can say, based on the experience I have with other industry, the learning adoption among legal professionals is actually among one of the highest. Next slide, please. Now, while time management skills were most popular last year, now this year we see heightened interest in courses relating to communication skills and Excel. It is also really interesting to see the interest in courses relating to diversity, inclusion, and belonging, as well as unconscious bias. Now, this is really aligned with the increase in discussion on this topic in Singapore in the past months. So here's another interesting observation. Learning Python is among the top trending courses viewed by legal professionals in Singapore in the last 12 months. I don't think it's a case of them wanting to learn how to code, but more like trying to understand what this is all about, right? Back to the earlier point, is about understanding what your client's problem is, and then you can then, have a good conversation with them. So how does this compare with other industries? Can we have the next slide, please? Now, across all industries, we are seeing a big uptick in skills upgrading in the past year as public sector and private sector work in tandem to drive tangible impact for upskilling initiative. So last year, we see that there's a significant growth in learners developing mental health and virtual working skills. Now, this is aligned with companies accelerating their adoption of virtual collaboration technology, as well as adopting new ways to connect with employees and clients. Now, in this time of unending change, companies and employees need to pay close attention to non-domain skills to optimize performance. Next slide, please. So now that we have a better understanding of skills in the industry, let's take a look at what are the in-demand roles sought after by legal industry in Singapore in the last 12 months. Now, as you can see on this slide, out of the top 5 in-demand roles, 3 are non-legals. And I have bad news for you if you're currently hiring for these roles or planning to, because all these 3 non-legal roles are very high in demand in Singapore. Regis talked about hiring, having tech talents to complement your legal workforce. Now, I'm very sure you have experienced some hard time trying to hire these talents. Now, can I have the next slide, please? Now, let's use the business development as an example. Now, as you can see, and this is from LinkedIn data, the median tenure of business development professionals is only 18 months. 18 months across all industry, and hiring demand is really high. It's very high. Talent pool, unfortunately, within the legal industry is limited. So my recommendation is for employer to widen the talent pool by expanding their search using skills-based hiring approach. Now, the way to go about doing this is to have a clear idea of, first, which are the non-negotiable skills. Second, now which are those skills that can be learned fairly quickly and on the job. And third, where do you already have skills inventory and to find a complement? I think this was shared earlier as well by the earlier panelists. Now, for example, I would assume that legal knowledge will be in abundance in a law firm when hiring a BD person. So would it be feasible to hire a candidate with other critical skills and then have a strategy to transfer essential legal knowledge to the new hire? So as the legal industry transforms, the need for tech talent and skills will increase. And it is no secret that there is a huge shortage in supply of these talent globally. The ability and willingness to adopt an agile hiring practice will enable companies to find the right talent at the right time. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, we know this, skills are the new currency at work. So from what we have just seen, there are opportunities to grow tech skills in the industry, may not be lawyers, but in the industry, as the industry goes through digital transformation. So as a business, we need to consider the skills inventory in the organization. Now, if it is relevant to the constant changes driven by technological advancement. So as an individual, we need to frequently review if our skills that we possess is relevant to the frequent evolving roles for the same occupation as a result of digital disruption. So I think by focusing on skills, we empower ourselves and with the agility to stay in the game. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elsie. That was fascinating. Gallop through the data. I'm just trying to synthesize it all in my brain. Now, there's a question that's coming from the audience that really is apposite to this point. So what I'm hearing from you, Elsie, and what I've also heard from Rajesh and Duke, is that the market is hot for the right kind of skills. And that includes these sort of legal technologist roles, different kind of skills, not just technology, but different kind of skills. So that's the perception. And the data seems to be bearing that out. It's a hot market. Now, here's a question from the audience. It says, panelists, thanks so much for your great insights. Well done, panelists. Quick question. Richard Susskind predicted in Tomorrow's Lawyers there will be different kinds of legal specialist roles appearing going forward. Legal engineers, legal knowledge management, legal strategists, legal designers. It's been 7 years. Why haven't we seen these roles take off yet? And when, if at all, will the industry be ready for these roles? Now, I think the data is telling us that they have taken off, but the perception, certainly from this audience member, seems to be different. So who'd like to take that question and respond to our audience? Rajesh?
Happy to chip in. Just in terms of what's going on in the market today, it's very much in demand. Legal engineers, for example. So we have legal engineers within the firm. We treat them not as legal engineers, but business transformation agents, essentially. And I think taking that perspective is important because we look to them not just in terms of the so-called amorphous legal engineering title, but someone who's there to look at the way in which we are servicing our clients, the type of services we provide, and then provide suggestion in terms of changing that the manner in which we engage with the clients, changing the structure of our deliverables, and that's where the technology comes in, right? So the technology comes in often in just the actual deliverable component itself. So a little bit of coding skills will be useful. So the legal engineers we have are familiar with basic things like Microsoft Power Tools, as well as some of the no coding platforms that are available in the market today. It's important to train lawyers to understand how to use these tools also, because there will be a few gems within your firm, not necessarily the younger lawyers. Let me stress that point, because the key thing people make the mistake of assuming is that it will be the younger lawyers that will get this. The younger lawyers are just trying to survive learning a professional trade. They're extremely stressed just doing, as Duke and I mentioned before, becoming good lawyers. If you're going to burden them with taking the charge or the lead on this point and abrogate the responsibility to them, the law firms are missing out big time. It is important for that push to come right from the top, from the managing partner downwards. In the case of a small law firm, it means you yourself need to understand what this thing about legal engineering is about. How can you change the way in which you do service deliverables? Understand a little bit about no coding platforms and be your firm's legal engineer. That's the perspective I would put across.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you, Rajesh, for that insight. I don't know if anybody else on the panel wants to comment briefly on that before we move on to another question. We've got quite a few coming through. Duke?
I think on that one, I don't have much to add other than those roles are going to be, the growth of those roles are going to be driven by a combination of client demand, number one, but also providers like Raja and Tyne creating the demand, going to the market and explaining to the clients, hey, look, this is how we delivered legal service before. We can continue to do that if you want and pay for that. This is the other way we can do it. Is going to change the way that you and I are going to work together, but these are additional benefits. Are you interested? So I think it's a combination of both.
Fabulous. I'm going to move on to some more questions. We've got quite a lively audience here, which is great. Let's step back a little bit and think a bit more about potentially the regulatory perspective here. So here's a question from the audience. Duke, thanks for your thoughts. You made a great point about legal reskilling by HR for roles in the legal industry, but the assumption seems to be that the private sector should be the one leading the change. Turning that on its head, can the public sector, especially in countries like Singapore, have a role in leading the charge instead? And this goes to Elsie's point really about the sort of the gap between what's happening in Singapore and in North America. So I want to come to both Elsie and Duke. As the question is addressed to you, Duke, do you want to have a quick stab at that?
Yes, just quickly on the roles of the stakeholders in this. Absolutely, everybody has a role to play, and certainly governments and regulators can have an impact in terms of not only kind of gently nudging or not so gently nudging the private sector players to change, but also creating examples. And we've seen that specifically in Singapore. But I think there's a bigger issue here of irrespective of who's driving it. And I want to go back to the data that Elsie presented. What's interesting is I think what was presented is like, well, what's trending is analytical skills. And is this a new type of, is it a new trend? And we have to be very careful here. And going back to what Rajesh and I are talking about, and I can see lawyers seeing the data that Elsie, hey, I'm doing okay. I'm a lawyer. I have great analytical skills. I don't believe that's what the data say. I don't think the clients are saying, I want that what's trending is analytical skills of legal issues. That's already, like we said, table stakes. And actually it's reflected in the other data that Elsie did mention that she flashed on, which is the top trending skill for all professionals, which is critical thinking and problem solving. That is what clients think when they say analytical skills. I want a lawyer at the table who is basically taking all the skills, analytical skills, but be a problem solver. And in fact, beyond the LinkedIn data, this is not a new trend. It's been identified by studies by the Big Four and the World Economic Forum as the top 3-4 skills: critical thinking, strategic, problem solving. And in fact, I think as a preview, I saw initial data from the Lifted survey. I think that's coming out of the top 3 as well. So going back to our bigger conversation, what exactly do clients want? They want the lawyer sitting at the table who have the interdisciplinary skills to, number one, assess what the nature of the problem is and all the component parts of it, and be part of the team and bring the different competencies, whether they bring it or they say, hey, I need a subject matter expert like Rajesh did. And I think the data bears out it's a skill and demand. But it's not a new trend, number one. Number two, it's even more critical as the world becomes more complex. So it goes back, well, how do we solve this? Well, there's a role for all the stakeholders, but we have to recognize that this is not new. The clients have always demanded that lawyers be good problem solvers. And the question is, how do we go about implementing it?
Fantastic. Elsie, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that from a data perspective.
Yeah, not so much on data perspective. I think the question was that who should be driving that change?
Yeah.
Right? So coming from a non-legal perspective and non-data, my question here would be, who has a big stake here, right? And what would be the risk of not driving this change? Right. I as Duke mentioned just now, is really everybody has a stake in it. I think the question that we should be asking is not so much about who should be driving, but what's the consequence of not changing.
Yeah.
So if you look at other industries, successful I would say industry that has gone through change in many times, sometimes are even driven by the change. The disruptors are people not from that industry, or not from the industry. We have seen how that has happened with the Amazon of the world. We have seen, Grab, and for that matter, even in Singapore, virtual medicine, right? Virtual medicine, I think it's called Anywhere Doc or something. That is set up by somebody who has a mechanical engineering background, not a doctor. So I think the way we think about it shouldn't be about, is it me, is it you, but what is the consequence of not moving, of not transforming?
Yeah, there's so many places that we could go with that. I think change is a very important component of this. And I would like to touch very briefly on that, because I don't want to get too distracted from the questions from the audience. But if we think of change as having two components, one is the sort of paranoia thing, what's everybody else doing? And one is the opportunity thing, get excited about driving innovation. My slightly jaded, I have to say, view, having driven innovation for a very long time in a relatively traditional law firm at the time, is that often lawyers lack the sort of paranoia that you need and the excitement about the innovation that you need. Is that true from your perspective, Rajesh, or is that a very negative take on the profession?
It's true, and what you need to do to drive is to understand what would enthuse a lawyer. What is it that excites a lawyer? And a couple of things happen there. Paranoia is not often felt. I don't know if you know, but over the last year and a half or so, lawyers aren't struggling. Businesses are doing okay, and the takings are good. So in that context, also, you can't even say that COVID is going to drive innovation. I believe it does to some extent, only because of necessity, i.e., I can't go to court, therefore I use Zoom. I wouldn't chalk that down to successful implementation of technology. That's just a response to a necessity. That's it. The moment there is no need to go to use Zoom, will they continue to use Zoom? Answer is likely no. And that, to me, is the key messaging to look at. Lawyers are driven to, as Duke also rightly pointed out, to be problem solvers. If this use of technology can be shown to help them solve their problems for their clients faster, that's when the hook comes in. So the way we drive legal engineers within the firm, for example, is to apply the legal engineering skill sets to a specific problem that lawyers have. So for example, in the shipping space, it might surprise you, but today, even now, when you look at drawing ship collisions, you use pencil, paper, draw the line, 2 lines, ship A, ship B, cross, collision, right? Now, anyone who plays a computer game would have played Space Invaders and know, boom. That's it, vectors, lines, collisions. Take a simple construct like that, build an app, give it to the lawyer, he brings it to the client looks at it, both parties say, wow, we are like, seriously? And that's where the magic happens. Because I have now created a tool that allows my lawyer to go out there and solve a problem faster, provide visual clarity to the client, and move on to the next project. So you solve all of the lawyer's needs, time pressure, cost pressure as far as the customer is concerned, speed and addressing the speed issues. Time and speed are two different things. Yeah, remember that. All of those addressed fully means you are making sure that technology helps the lawyers' pain points. Adoption will increase. The next point, if I may, finally, is the practices themselves. As I mentioned before, the DDE approach. It's a way of thinking about data and digital economy as a series of competencies for a field of practice, as opposed to just our deep specialization as we stand. The beauty of that is that it actually allows the law firms to become more cohesive. It allows smaller law firms to justify doing more external learning and training to learn these specialized skills, to go to Lifted and to use the various programs available there to improve yourself, to go to NUS, to SMU, attend those evening classes, to learn about blockchain, smart contract, and really be ready for those skill sets, because all of these pain points are addressed. And the training, the pedagogy, as well as the curriculum of these courses must also be reshaped to not just focus on the substantive legal principles, but the applicability of those principles to actual billable work for the lawyer. The moment that happens, the lawyer's eyes are going to light up. They're going to listen, and they learn. And they know they need to learn, and they need to continue learning and apply those skills. So let's stop using Zoom and using video conferences as an example of how lawyers have now become digitized. That's not true at all. It's just a pain point being addressed. This is where the technology implementation becomes sustainable, when you tie it to the lawyer's actual pain points.
I could not agree more with that. That's absolutely bang on. And it takes us straight into actually a question from the audience, which says, I love this, it may sound sexy to have digital skills, but soft skills are non-negotiable, yes. Given limited time and resources, what would be the minimal requirement to be digital, and how do you strike the balance? It's a bit like, it's a bit like your stickiness point. What's the core thing that really defines being digital for these purposes? Elsie, let's take you first for your view on that.
Okay, so I think this differs from industry to industry. So the way I look at it is that, are we optimizing the tools that we have that's out there to improve delivery of services, right? The delivery of services to your customers, right? So now, do you have that skills? Digital skill doesn't mean you need to go around learning all kind of coding skill, Python. No, I don't think that's the point, right? Even if you were to ask me, internet search, is that digital skills? Yeah, it is. Right, legal research. How are you doing legal research? And by the way, just a little personal information. Many years ago, more than 20 years, I used to work for this company called Butterworths, which was eventually merged with LexisNexis. So this is like a little homecoming. And if I look at how legal research was done in the past versus now, it's hugely different. Right? Hugely different. Now, are the lawyers actually embracing those skills? So this is what I would say about minimum skills. Whatever tools, whatever platforms that are out there, are they already leveraging it? That should be the bare minimum.
Yeah, thank you, Elsie. That's great. Duke, have you got a view on this?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the right question, because I actually don't know what it means. Because of this, the client doesn't buy a lawyer because that lawyer is more digital than not. They're buying that client because, do you understand my problem? Which may include some digital issues or may not digital. So let me give for one example. A sales contract with a limitation and liability clause. Lawyers, many lawyers that we know advise on limitation liability clause in sales contract. Now, until now, the lawyers said, well, based on my experience and, if there's a dispute, if we're in this court, there's a good or high likelihood that we will prevail, right? This kind of, yes, given my, expertise, blah, blah, blah. With technology, it's possible very soon for a program to review that liability clause, the jurisdiction, all the cases, and say, if there's a dispute under this clause in this jurisdiction, in these courts, there's a 69% chance that you will win. Now, does that solve the client's problem? No. The client is the problem. The question, the decision facing the client is, I have a dispute. Do I hire expensive lawyers and actually litigate the clause? Or do I, are there other considerations that will pull me back? And the value of that lawyer sitting on the table is not to say, oh, look at my computer application that told me you have a 69% chance of winning, but making a good decision about, hey, even if you have a dispute, Is it worth fighting? Are you concerned about reputational risk? Are you concerned about other customers being unhappy that you're suing another customer? Are you thinking about the cost of to the organization of the interrogatories and depositions? What is the best decision for you? Now that I get, the computer has generated this data point about 69% of winning, that what they're paying in terms of the fee for that lawyer is to help them make that decision, not the data that, there's a 69% chance of winning. That's the problem-solving skill that is identified by all these studies on the data what clients are looking for.
Fabulous. I'm going to ask a very quick one-worder from each of you before we sum this up, because we're getting to time, actually. It's flown by, hasn't it? We talked a little bit about education. We talked a little bit about training and the importance of that. And I think the audience recognizes it. If each of you were going to put one module onto a curriculum of a law school that isn't there now, what would it be, Rajesh? In a word, or a couple of words.
The T-shaped lawyer, where Peter Corner tries to push, as well as design thinking and product redevelopment. Design thinking. Yeah,
design thinking. Okay, thank you. Elsie, what would you put on there?
You know what? I don't come from the industry. I would say a placeholder module. A placeholder module that is aligned with whatever that's in demand, whatever that's required, in-demand skills, in-demand jobs.
I like that. So an agile kind of module that would flex depending on what the market might deliver. That is spoken like a LinkedIn professional full of insight there, Elsie. Thank you very much. Duke, what would you put on that on that curriculum?
Yeah, I sound like a broken record. I sound like a broken, and because I have relation with NUS, this is close to my heart. I sound like a broken record, but for example, I go back to analytical skills, problem-solving skills. A lot of even HR leaders and leaders think, well, Duke, that's just soft skills that you develop with experience. It's simply not true. It's not a soft skill. It is something that can be taught. Not everybody will be as good as Rajesh, but you can scale, that kind of fundamental skill that can be trained. So I think there should be, specific module on, systemic thinking and problem solving.
I like it. I like it. Okay, let me try and sum up where we got to in this really fascinating exchange, which I've greatly enjoyed. I wish we'd had another hour, actually. So if I were going to try to sum up this session in 3 words, I would put them like this: 1, multidisciplinary; 1, client centricity; and 3, learning. And let me say a little bit about what we've learned on all of those. Multidisciplinary. So we heard from Rajesh about the structural changes that you're making at Raja & Tann to bring together those traditional legal skills with technology skills to deliver a multi-skilled proposition to clients. And this doesn't mean that lawyers need to be retrained as tech lawyers. It just means that you need to refocus the delivery, the multi-skilled delivery for your clients on what they actually need, and pull in SMEs as and when you need them. Yeah. On the client centricity point, we heard from Duke about what clients really need, and what they really want is a lawyer that understands their business problem. And technology literacy is part of that problem-solving exercise, but it's not an end in itself. It's time, Duke told us, to rethink the talent model from a client perspective. And I think that's absolutely right. And it's definitely resonated with our audience members as well. Learning. We heard from Elsie that legal in general might lag behind other industries in terms of development of some skills, and data was a great point that you gave us. 14% growth in legal as compared to a much higher growth in other industries. That's not a great picture, but the positive that I took from you, Elsie, is that there's a real hunger in legal to learn more. 146% increase in time spent learning online by legal professionals, including soft skills and some coding skills. Python cropped up there. But the focus needs to be on learning competencies. That's what we got to, learning competencies, and training and learning that's focused on the actual billable work for lawyers. It's really grounded in practicality. That's how change is going to bite. That's how we're going to drive adoption. And that's how we can all become more digital and upskill our lawyer workforce. So that's what I think I take from it. Multidisciplinary teams, client centricity, and a focus on the right kind of learning and competencies. It only remains for me to say a massive thank you to our panel, what absolute experts that they are. Thank you for your insights. Thank you, the audience, for contributing. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions. We can see them here, and I'm sure the panel will be happy to respond to individuals following this. Have a fantastic TechLaw Fest. We've really enjoyed ourselves. Thank you to the team at TechLaw Fest who made this very easy for us and allow us to enjoy ourselves. Thanks for your time. Thanks, panel, and have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.